My business coach told me they chose to follow better leadership when he revealed he had systematically stolen my entire client base during our 12-year partnership. My name is Samuel Rodriguez, 51 years old, management consultant with 18 years of experience building strategic business relationships for mid-market companies. I had developed my consulting practice through rigorous relationship management and detailed client development protocols, generating $180,000 in annual revenue from carefully cultivated long-term partnerships. When Martin Hayes smirked during our final meeting and announced that my clients had recognized superior strategic guidance, I simply said, "I wish you success in your expanded practice." What Hayes didn't realize was that my systematic approach to client relationship management included comprehensive documentation of every interaction, communication, and strategic planning session that would expose his deliberate violation of our partnership agreement and professional coaching ethics standards. The confrontation took place in my downtown Phoenix office on a Thursday afternoon, 6 weeks after I had noticed unusual patterns in client communication and several unexpected contract non-renewals that seemed coordinated rather than coincidental. "Samuel, your clients have been expressing concerns about your strategic planning methodology," Hayes began with practiced confidence. "Several have approached me about transitioning to more dynamic leadership development programs." I had been expecting this conversation since discovering that Hayes had been conducting unauthorized client meetings during what he claimed were routine business development coaching sessions. "Which specific clients have expressed these concerns?" I asked while reaching for my client communication files. Hayes pulled out a leather portfolio and began reading from a list that included my 12 most valuable long-term relationships. Morrison Manufacturing, Davidson Industries, Phoenix Capital Partners, and Thompson Logistics have all committed to comprehensive strategic planning engagements with my consulting firm. The companies he listed represented over $180,000 in annual consulting revenue that I had built through careful relationship development and specialized strategic planning expertise spanning multiple years. "These transitions represent natural business evolution," Hayes continued. "Your clients need more sophisticated leadership development than your current methodology provides." I nodded thoughtfully while reviewing the detailed client interaction logs I maintained for strategic planning purposes. The documentation revealed patterns that contradicted Hayes's claims about organic client transitions. "Martin, our partnership agreement includes specific confidentiality clauses regarding client contact information and strategic planning documents," I observed. "How did you develop relationships with clients who weren't participating in your coaching programs?" Hayes's expression shifted slightly, revealing discomfort with direct questions about his client acquisition methods. "Samuel, business development requires proactive relationship building. I've been networking within your client base to understand market needs and competitive positioning." The response confirmed that Hayes had been systematically contacting my clients outside the scope of our coaching relationship, violating multiple provisions of our partnership agreement. "I see. And these networking activities included discussions about transitioning their consulting relationships away from our established strategic planning programs." Hayes gathered his materials with visible irritation. "Samuel, this is simply business competition. Your clients are free to choose service providers who better meet their evolving needs." I thanked Hayes for clarifying his position and walked him to the office door. Then I returned to my desk and began systematic review of 12 years of partnership documentation and client communication records. The automated email backup systems I had implemented for client relationship management had been capturing every communication Hayes sent from our shared office systems, creating comprehensive evidence of his systematic client solicitation activities. What I discovered in the first hour of analysis was sufficient to contact my corporate attorney, Patricia Brennan, for immediate consultation about contract enforcement and professional ethics violations. The email log showed that Hayes had been conducting systematic client outreach for over 8 months, using confidential strategic planning information to establish relationships and undermine confidence in my consulting methodology. "Patricia, "I need urgent consultation about systematic client theft by my business coach," I explained during our confidential phone call. "The documentation shows deliberate violation of confidentiality agreements and unauthorized use of proprietary client development strategies." Patricia had handled professional service contract disputes throughout her career and immediately recognized the seriousness of systematic client solicitation by trusted partners. "Samuel, if Hayes used confidential client information to develop competing relationships, you're looking at contract violations, breach of fiduciary duty, and potentially professional ethics sanctions," she explained. The evidence I was compiling showed not just opportunistic client contact, but systematic exploitation of the trusted relationship Hayes had developed through our coaching partnership. Hayes had been using his access to my strategic planning documents and client development protocols to identify vulnerability points and craft targeted solicitation strategies that leveraged confidential information about client needs and competitive challenges. Hayes accessed detailed client profiles, strategic planning notes, and competitive analysis reports that he used to develop unauthorized solicitation campaigns, I documented. His approach was methodical and designed to exploit confidential information for competitive advantage. The partnership agreement we had signed 12 years earlier included specific provisions prohibiting Hayes from contacting my clients for business development purposes, accessing confidential strategic planning materials, or using proprietary client relationship information for competing ventures. Our partnership contract explicitly restricts Hayes from soliciting business relationships with clients identified through our coaching engagement, I noted. His systematic client outreach violates multiple contractual provisions. But the most serious violation was Hayes's access to and use of proprietary strategic planning methodologies that I had developed over 18 years of management consulting experience. Hayes had been incorporating my specialized planning frameworks and competitive analysis techniques into his client presentations, essentially stealing intellectual property that represented years of professional development and refinement. Have you ever discovered that someone you trusted with your most valuable professional relationships was systematically exploiting that trust to destroy your business? Partnership agreements require verification through comprehensive documentation, especially when confidential client information is involved. My 18-year career in management consulting had been built on the foundation of systematic client relationship development and specialized strategic planning methodologies that created sustained competitive advantages for mid-market companies facing complex operational challenges. The consulting practice I had established, Rodriguez Strategic Solutions, represented years of careful relationship cultivation and proven expertise in organizational development and competitive positioning. I had launched my independent consulting practice in 2006 after 8 years at McKinsey & Company, where I had developed expertise in strategic planning for manufacturing and technology companies. My specialization in mid-market business development had attracted clients who needed sophisticated planning capabilities but couldn't afford the premium pricing of major consulting firms. Samuel's approach combines big firm strategic rigor with personalized attention and practical implementation guidance, noted client testimonial from Morrison Manufacturing CEO Jennifer Walsh. His methodology delivers measurable results while building internal organizational capabilities. The client relationships I had developed were based on demonstrated expertise in solving complex business challenges rather than marketing strategies or competitive pricing. Companies like Davidson Industries and Phoenix Capital Partners had worked with me for over 7 years, renewing consulting agreements based on documented performance improvements and strategic success metrics. Rodriguez Strategic Solutions provides planning frameworks that create sustainable competitive advantages, explained Davidson Industries President Michael Thompson. Samuel's systematic approach generates long-term value rather than short-term consulting revenue. The financial foundation of my practice reflected this long-term relationship strategy. 12 core clients generated $180,000 in annual revenue through retainer agreements that provided predictable income while supporting ongoing strategic planning initiatives. Martin Hayes had joined our partnership in 2012 when I recognized that my technical expertise in strategic planning needed to be complemented by enhanced business development and client relationship skills. Samuel, your strategic planning capabilities are exceptional, but your business development approach could benefit from systematic relationship management and expanded networking strategies, Hayes had observed during our initial consultation. Hayes brought impressive credentials from his previous role as senior business coach at Franklin Covey, with specialized expertise in executive leadership development and organizational change management. Martin's coaching methodology will help you expand client relationships and develop more comprehensive strategic planning engagements, I had reasoned when establishing our partnership agreement. The arrangement we created gave Hayes access to my client base for coaching and leadership development services, while I maintained responsibility for strategic planning and organizational consulting work. Our partnership leverages both strategic planning expertise and executive coaching capabilities to provide comprehensive organizational development services, we had explained to clients during joint presentations. For the first 8 years, the partnership had been mutually beneficial. Hayes's coaching services had enhanced client satisfaction, while my strategic planning work had provided the analytical foundation that justified expanded consulting engagements. The combination of Rodriguez's strategic frameworks and Hayes's leadership development creates comprehensive organizational improvement, noted Phoenix Capital Partners Managing Director Robert Kim. But Hayes had gradually been expressing frustration with what he characterized as limitations in our client development approach and revenue optimization strategies. Samuel, your conservative relationship management approach constrains our growth potential, Hayes had complained during quarterly reviews. We need more aggressive business development strategies to maximize client value and expand market share. I had consistently explained that sustainable consulting relationships required demonstrated expertise and long-term value creation rather than aggressive sales tactics or relationship exploitation. Martin, our clients value strategic planning consistency and methodical implementation support, I would respond. Relationship development requires patience and demonstrated competence rather than marketing pressure. But Hayes viewed my systematic approach as missed opportunities for revenue expansion and market penetration rather than strategic protection for valuable client relationships. Conservative client management limits our competitive positioning, Hayes had argued. We need to be more proactive about expanding service offerings and capturing larger strategic planning engagements. The philosophical differences between Hayes and my approach had been manageable when he was focused on coaching services that complemented my strategic planning work. But his recent behavior suggested he was planning to exploit our partnership for personal competitive advantage. The client interaction patterns I had been documenting showed that Hayes had been systematically studying my strategic planning methodologies and client relationship management techniques while developing unauthorized contact with decision-makers. Hayes has been requesting copies of strategic planning documents, client communication protocols, and competitive analysis frameworks that exceed his coaching responsibilities, I noted in partnership review files. His questions about client contract terms, renewal timelines, and competitive positioning had become increasingly detailed and focused on business development intelligence rather than coaching coordination. Hayes's interest in client business development strategies and competitive vulnerabilities suggests preparation for independent relationship cultivation, I documented. The automated backup systems I maintained for client communication management had been capturing Hayes's email activity, revealing systematic outreach to client executives that violated our partnership boundaries and confidentiality agreements. Hayes has been conducting client communications that bypass collaborative partnership protocols, I observed. His independent relationship development activities violate our agreed partnership structure. The evidence suggested that Hayes had been systematically preparing to exploit his access to my client base and strategic planning methodologies for independent business development that would directly compete with my consulting practice. Martin's systematic study of client relationships and strategic planning approaches indicates preparation for unauthorized business development rather than collaborative partnership enhancement, I compiled. The partnership agreement we had established included specific provisions preventing Hayes from using confidential client information or proprietary strategic planning methodologies for independent business ventures. But Hayes had apparently been planning to circumvent these restrictions through gradual relationship development that would position him as the primary strategic planning resource while marginalizing my role in client relationships. Have you ever realized that a trusted partner was systematically studying your business methods and client relationships to eventually replace you rather than collaborate with you? Professional partnerships require ongoing verification through documentation when confidential business information is shared. The comprehensive analysis I conducted during the week following Hayes' revelation showed that his systematic client theft had been planned and executed with sophisticated understanding of my relationship management protocols and strategic planning methodologies. His exploitation of our partnership wasn't opportunistic misconduct, but a carefully orchestrated scheme to transfer my client relationships while maintaining plausible deniability about legitimate business development. My forensic review of email communications revealed that Hayes had been conducting unauthorized client outreach for over 10 months, using confidential strategic planning information to establish independent relationships and gradually undermine confidence in my consulting effectiveness. Hayes' client communications show systematic pattern of relationship cultivation that violates multiple partnership agreement provisions, I documented. His approach was designed to gradually transfer client loyalty while avoiding obvious contract violations. The sophistication of his methods included using my strategic planning documents to identify client vulnerability points and competitive challenges, then positioning himself as offering superior solutions to problems he had learned about through confidential partnership access. Hayes incorporated proprietary competitive analysis and strategic planning insights into his unauthorized client presentations, I noted. His solicitation strategies were built entirely on confidential information obtained through our partnership, but the most damaging evidence was Hayes' systematic access to my client development databases and strategic planning archives that contained years of relationship history and competitive intelligence. Hayes downloaded complete client profiles, strategic planning histories, and competitive positioning analyses that represent 18 years of consulting relationship development, I compiled. The corporate attorney Patricia Brennan reviewed my evidence and immediately recognized the systematic nature of Hayes' contract violations and the potential for professional ethics sanctions. Samuel, Hayes' activities show classic patterns of partnership exploitation and systematic client theft, Patricia observed. The documented evidence proves deliberate violation of confidentiality agreements and unauthorized use of proprietary business development strategies. The technical methods Hayes had used to facilitate his client theft showed careful planning, designed to avoid immediate detection while gradually transferring relationship control from my consulting practice to his independent venture. Hayes had been scheduling coaching sessions with client executives that were actually business development meetings focused on strategic planning needs and competitive positioning challenges. Hayes' calendar shows 57 client meetings over 10 months that were characterized as leadership coaching, but included strategic planning discussions, I documented. His unauthorized expansion of coaching scope violated partnership boundaries and client engagement protocols. The client communication records revealed that Hayes had been systematically studying my strategic planning methodologies and incorporating proprietary frameworks into his independent presentations without authorization or attribution. Hayes used my specialized planning templates, competitive analysis frameworks, and implementation protocols in client presentations for his independent consulting venture, I noted. His theft of intellectual property enabled competitive advantages that were built entirely on my proprietary methodologies. Most concerning was Hayes' access to sensitive client financial information and competitive intelligence that I had compiled through years of strategic planning engagements. Hayes accessed confidential client financial analyses, competitive positioning studies, and strategic planning recommendations that represent years of consulting relationship development, I documented. This information had allowed Hayes to craft targeted solicitation strategies that addressed specific client needs and competitive challenges that he had learned about through unauthorized access to my strategic planning files. Hayes's client presentations included solutions to problems that were documented in my confidential strategic planning reports, I observed. His knowledge of client challenges and competitive vulnerabilities was obtained entirely through partnership access violations. The professional ethics implications were significant. Hayes was a certified business coach subject to professional standards that prohibited systematic client solicitation and unauthorized use of confidential business information obtained through coaching relationships. Hayes's activities violate fundamental coaching ethics standards regarding confidentiality, professional boundaries, and conflict of interest, Patricia explained. His systematic client theft creates grounds for professional sanctions and license suspension. The International Coach Federation and Arizona Board of Professional Counselors maintained strict ethical standards that prohibited coaches from exploiting client relationships for personal business development or using confidential information for competitive advantage. Hayes's systematic violation of coaching ethics creates exposure to professional sanctions that could include license suspension and permanent industry disbarment, Patricia noted. But Hayes had made critical errors that would expose his systematic theft and destroy his credibility with both clients and professional oversight bodies. His client presentations included proprietary strategic planning terminology and analytical frameworks that were unique to my consulting methodology and couldn't have been developed independently. Hayes's strategic planning proposals include specialized terminology and analytical approaches that are specific to my consulting practice, I documented. His use of proprietary methodologies proves systematic copying rather than independent development. The email evidence was particularly damaging. Hayes's communications with clients included strategic planning insights and competitive analysis that were derived directly from my confidential consulting reports. Hayes's client emails reference specific competitive challenges and strategic opportunities that were documented in my confidential consulting files I compiled. His knowledge of sensitive business information proves unauthorized access to proprietary strategic planning documents. The timeline evidence showed that Hayes's client presentations consistently followed my strategic planning sessions by 2 to 4 weeks, suggesting systematic review and exploitation of my consulting work. Hayes's client outreach patterns correlate directly with my strategic planning engagement schedules, I noted. His solicitation timing proves systematic monitoring of my consulting activities and unauthorized exploitation of strategic planning outcomes. The contract violation evidence was overwhelming. Hayes had systematically breached confidentiality agreements, partnership boundaries, and professional ethics standards while exploiting trusted access to steal my most valuable client relationships. Hayes's documented activities constitute comprehensive partnership agreement violations that justify immediate contract termination and damages recovery, Patricia advised. The evidence I had compiled provided comprehensive proof of Hayes's systematic client theft, while establishing grounds for professional ethics complaints and civil litigation that would eliminate his ability to exploit stolen relationships. Professional partnership agreements require enforcement through systematic documentation when trusted relationships are exploited for competitive advantage rather than collaborative business development. Have you ever compiled evidence showing that a trusted partner was systematically stealing your most valuable professional relationships through deliberate contract violations? Sometimes comprehensive documentation becomes essential for exposing sophisticated relationship exploitation disguised as legitimate business development. The strategic legal response that Patricia Brennan developed required careful coordination between contract enforcement, professional ethics complaints, and civil litigation to maximize client relationship recovery while ensuring appropriate sanctions for Hayes's systematic partnership violations. The evidence I had compiled provided overwhelming proof of deliberate client theft, but the legal strategy needed to prevent Hayes from using stolen relationships while building comprehensive accountability across multiple professional oversight bodies. Samuel, Hayes's systematic client theft creates exposure under contract law, professional ethics standards, and civil liability for tortious interference with business relationships, Patricia explained during our strategic planning session. The comprehensive evidence you've compiled supports simultaneous legal actions that will eliminate his ability to profit from stolen client relationships. The contract enforcement strategy focused on Hayes's violations of confidentiality agreements and partnership boundaries that were explicitly defined in our 12-year relationship agreement. Your partnership contract includes specific provisions prohibiting Hayes from soliciting your clients or using confidential business information for competing ventures, Patricia noted. His documented violations justify immediate contract termination plus damages for relationship theft and competitive harm. But the most effective approach would be professional ethics complaints that could result in Hayes's coaching license suspension and permanent industry sanctions. The International Coach Federation maintains strict ethical standards that Hayes systematically violated through his client theft activities, Patricia explained. Professional sanctions would eliminate his ability to practice coaching while you recover stolen client relationships. The Arizona Board of Professional Counselors investigation would provide additional regulatory oversight that could result in criminal referrals if Hayes's activities constituted systematic fraud or deceptive business practices. Hayes's use of coaching credentials to facilitate systematic client theft may constitute professional fraud that warrants criminal investigation, Patricia noted. Meanwhile, I was documenting additional evidence of Hayes's partnership violations while preparing comprehensive client communication strategies that would explain the situation transparently and professionally. Patricia, maintaining client relationships during this legal process requires careful balance between transparency and discretion, I observed. Clients need to understand Hayes's contract violations without feeling exploited by our partnership disputes. The client notification strategy I developed emphasized my commitment to professional ethics and systematic strategic planning while explaining Hayes's unauthorized activities in factual, non-emotional terms. I want to inform you about unauthorized client solicitation activities by my former business coach Martin Hayes. I began in standardized client communications. Hayes violated our partnership agreement by using confidential strategic planning information to develop independent client relationships. The response from clients was immediate and supportive. Most had been uncomfortable with Hayes's aggressive transition attempts and appreciated understanding the contractual and ethical violations underlying his behavior. Samuel, Hayes's approach felt manipulative and unprofessional, responded Morrison Manufacturing CEO Jennifer Walsh. We prefer working with consultants who respect professional boundaries and ethical standards. The client feedback revealed that Hayes's solicitation methods had actually damaged his credibility rather than enhancing his competitive position with my established relationships. Hayes's pressure tactics and criticism of your strategic planning methodology created concerns about his professional integrity, noted Davidson Industries President Michael Thompson. But the most significant discovery was that Hayes had been misrepresenting his qualifications and strategic planning expertise to clients who were expecting services he couldn't actually deliver. Hayes promised comprehensive strategic planning capabilities that exceeded his actual coaching credentials, I documented. His misrepresentation of expertise creates additional grounds for professional ethics violations. The International Coach Federation investigation was proceeding rapidly based on the comprehensive evidence of systematic client solicitation and unauthorized use of confidential business information. ICF investigators have confirmed that Hayes's activities violate fundamental coaching ethics standards, reported Ethics Compliance Officer Robert Martinez. His systematic client theft warrants immediate license suspension pending full investigation. The professional sanctions were creating immediate pressure on Hayes while eliminating his ability to continue exploiting stolen client relationships through coaching credentials that provided professional credibility. Hayes's coaching license suspension prevents him from marketing strategic planning services under professional coaching credentials, Patricia noted. His competitive advantage was based entirely on coaching authority that he systematically violated. The civil litigation strategy focused on damages recovery for lost client relationships, plus punitive penalties for Hayes's deliberate contract violations and professional ethics breaches. Hayes's systematic partnership violations created damages that include lost revenue, competitive harm, and reputation management costs, Patricia calculated. The comprehensive evidence supports damage claims exceeding $300,000. But the most effective aspect of our legal strategy was preventing Hayes from using my proprietary strategic planning methodologies in his independent consulting venture. Hayes incorporated your specialized planning frameworks and competitive analysis techniques into his client presentations, Patricia observed. His unauthorized use of intellectual property creates additional liability beyond simple client theft. The injunctive relief we were seeking would prohibit Hayes from using any strategic planning methods or client information obtained through our partnership, effectively eliminating his competitive advantages. Hayes's consulting practice is built entirely on stolen methodologies and client relationships, Patricia noted. Injunctive relief would eliminate the foundation of his competing venture. The comprehensive legal strategy was designed to provide complete client relationship recovery while ensuring maximum accountability for Hayes's systematic partnership violations. Multiple legal approaches create overlapping pressure that prevents Hayes from profiting from stolen relationships while maximizing recovery of your consulting practice, Patricia explained. The evidence I had compiled through systematic documentation was providing the foundation for legal actions that would not only recover my client base, but also establish professional standards for partnership ethics and coaching oversight. Your comprehensive documentation has created evidence that makes Hayes's violations impossible to deny or minimize, Patricia observed. The systematic nature of his theft ensures maximum legal consequences and professional sanctions. Hayes's confidence about client loyalty was about to encounter systematic legal pressure and professional oversight that would expose every aspect of his partnership violations while ensuring appropriate accountability. Have you ever built legal strategy so comprehensive that it addressed partnership violations across multiple professional oversight bodies and legal jurisdictions? Sometimes, systematic contract enforcement requires coordinated approaches that prevent relationship exploitation while establishing industry-wide ethical standards. The coordinated legal and professional ethics actions that began executing 6 weeks after Hayes's client theft revelation created immediate disruption to his independent consulting venture while exposing the systematic nature of his partnership violations to clients, professional oversight bodies, and industry colleagues who had been deceived about his qualifications and methods. The contract enforcement, ethics complaints, and civil litigation proceeded simultaneously, creating comprehensive pressure that eliminated Hayes's ability to profit from stolen relationships. The International Coach Federation's suspension of Hayes's coaching credentials immediately undermined his credibility with clients who had been told that his strategic planning services were backed by professional coaching expertise and ethical standards. Mr. Hayes's coaching license has been suspended pending investigation of systematic client solicitation violations and unauthorized use of confidential business information, ICF Ethics Director Robert Martinez announced. His activities violated fundamental coaching ethics that prohibit exploitation of client relationships for personal business development. Hayes's response to the professional sanctions revealed the extent to which his entire business model depended on coaching credentials rather than legitimate strategic planning expertise. Hayes's marketing materials emphasize his coaching certifications and professional affiliations, I documented. The license suspension eliminates the authority that justified his client transition requests. The Arizona Board of Professional Counselors investigation was proceeding with similar findings about Hayes's systematic violation of professional boundaries and misuse of coaching relationships for business development purposes. Hayes used coaching credentials to access confidential client information that he exploited for unauthorized business solicitation, reported board investigator Patricia Newman. His activities constitute professional fraud that warrants permanent license revocation. But the most damaging development for Hayes was client recognition that his strategic planning promises exceeded his actual capabilities and professional qualifications. Morrison Manufacturing had contracted with Hayes for comprehensive strategic planning services based on his claims about proprietary methodologies and superior analytical frameworks. Hayes promised strategic planning capabilities that he obviously doesn't possess. Morrison CEO Jennifer Walsh reported during her return consultation. His planning proposals were generic templates that lacked the specialized analysis we need. Davidson Industries had similar experiences, with Hayes's inability to deliver the sophisticated competitive analysis and strategic frameworks that he had promised during his unauthorized solicitation activities. Hayes's strategic planning work was superficial and derivative, Davidson President Michael Thompson noted. He clearly doesn't have the expertise or methodologies that justified our transition away from Rodriguez Strategic Solutions. The client feedback was revealing that Hayes had been systematically misrepresenting his qualifications while promising services he couldn't actually provide at the level clients expected. Hayes's strategic planning deliverables were inferior to your established methodology, Phoenix Capital Partners Managing Director Robert Kim observed. His competitive analysis lacked the depth and industry expertise that we require. The contract litigation was proceeding favorably due to the comprehensive evidence of Hayes's systematic partnership agreement violations and unauthorized use of confidential business development information. Hayes's documented activities proved deliberate breach of confidentiality agreements and intentional interference with established client relationships, Civil Court Judge Patricia Chambers ruled during preliminary hearings. The injunctive relief that Judge Chambers granted immediately prohibited Hayes from using any strategic planning methodologies or client information obtained through our partnership, effectively eliminating his competitive advantages. Mr. Hayes is enjoined from using strategic planning frameworks, client development protocols, or competitive analysis techniques that were developed through his partnership with Rodriguez Strategic Solutions, Judge Chambers ordered. Hayes's attempts to continue his independent consulting practice without access to my proprietary methodologies revealed his lack of original strategic planning capabilities and professional expertise. Hayes cannot deliver strategic planning services without using methodologies he stole from our partnership, I documented. His consulting practice collapses when prevented from exploiting my intellectual property. The civil damages calculation was approaching $400,000 based on lost client revenue, competitive harm, and punitive penalties for Hayes's deliberate contract violations and professional ethics breaches. Hayes's systematic partnership violations created damages that exceed simple revenue loss, Patricia Brennan calculated. His professional misconduct justifies punitive penalties that reflect the deliberate nature of his client theft. But Hayes was discovering that his stolen client relationships weren't sustainable without the strategic planning expertise and systematic methodology that had originally attracted clients to my consulting practice. Clients are recognizing that Hayes doesn't possess the analytical capabilities or strategic planning expertise that justified his competitive claims, I observed. Thompson Logistics had terminated their contract with Hayes after discovering that his strategic planning recommendations were based on outdated industry analysis and generic business development templates. Hayes's planning proposals showed no understanding of our competitive challenges or market positioning requirements, Thompson CEO Sarah Davis reported. His work product was completely inadequate for our strategic planning needs. The systematic client returns were providing validation that my established relationships were based on demonstrated expertise rather than marketing manipulation or aggressive business development tactics. Clients are choosing proven strategic planning capabilities over Hayes's unsupported competitive claims, I documented. The professional reputation damage that Hayes was experiencing extended beyond individual client relationships to industry recognition that his coaching credentials had been systematically violated for personal business advantage. Hayes's ethics violations have been reported throughout the business coaching community, ICF Regional Director Michael Torres noted. His reputation for professional integrity has been permanently damaged. The comprehensive legal victory was providing complete client relationship recovery while ensuring maximum accountability for Hayes's systematic partnership violations and professional ethics violations. Hayes's attempt to steal your client base has completely backfired, Patricia observed. His violations have strengthened your competitive position while destroying his professional credibility. The systematic approach to evidence compilation and legal strategy had transformed Hayes's sophisticated client theft into comprehensive exposure and professional destruction that eliminated his ability to compete using stolen relationships. Have you ever seen systematic partnership violations completely exposed through coordinated legal and professional oversight actions? Sometimes, comprehensive accountability requires multiple enforcement mechanisms to address sophisticated relationship exploitation and professional ethics violations. The complete collapse of Hayes's independent consulting venture occurred within 4 months of our initial legal actions, as his systematic partnership violations and professional ethics breaches eliminated every aspect of his competitive credibility while ensuring comprehensive client relationship recovery and financial damages that exceeded initial projections. The coordinated enforcement across contract law, professional ethics oversight, and civil litigation created accountability that transformed attempted client theft into enhanced market position for my consulting practice. Hayes's professional coaching credentials were permanently revoked by both the International Coach Federation and Arizona Board of Professional Counselors after comprehensive investigations confirmed systematic client solicitation violations and unauthorized exploitation of confidential business relationships. Mr. Hayes's coaching license has been permanently revoked due to systematic violation of professional ethics standards and deliberate exploitation of client relationships for personal business advantage, ICF Ethics Director Robert Martinez announced. His conduct represents fundamental breach of coaching professional standards that warrants permanent industry disbarment. The professional sanctions eliminated Hayes's ability to market consulting services under coaching credentials while creating industry-wide recognition of his ethics violations that damaged his reputation beyond recovery. Hayes's ethics violations have been reported throughout the business development and strategic planning communities, noted Professional Services Association Director Patricia Newman. His reputation for professional integrity has been permanently destroyed. But the most significant victory was the comprehensive client relationship recovery that validated my systematic approach to strategic planning and relationship management over Hayes's aggressive exploitation tactics. All 12 clients who had been targeted by Hayes's systematic solicitation had returned to Rodriguez Strategic Solutions within 6 months, with expanded consulting agreements that reflected their appreciation for professional ethics and proven expertise. Samuel's transparent handling of Hayes's ethics violations demonstrated exactly the kind of professional integrity we need in strategic planning relationships, Morrison Manufacturing CEO Jennifer Walsh explained. His systematic approach to business development creates trust that Hayes's manipulation tactics destroyed. The client testimonials emphasized how Hayes's pressure tactics and misrepresentation of capabilities had actually strengthened their appreciation for my established methodology and professional standards. Hayes's aggressive solicitation made us recognize the value of Rodriguez's systematic planning approach and ethical business practices, Davidson Industries President Michael Thompson noted. The civil litigation settlement required Hayes to pay $385,000 in damages for contract violations, client relationship interference, and professional misconduct that had created competitive harm and reputation management costs. Hayes's systematic partnership violations created liability that includes lost revenue, competitive damages, and punitive penalties for deliberate misconduct, Civil Court Judge Patricia Chambers ruled. The comprehensive evidence supports maximum damages under contract and tort law. But Hayes's financial resources were insufficient to satisfy the judgment, requiring asset seizure and wage garnishment procedures that would ensure long-term payment while preventing him from rebuilding consulting practice revenue. Hayes's available assets total approximately $85,000, requiring extended payment plans and income monitoring to satisfy the judgment, asset recovery specialist Linda Thompson reported. Meanwhile, my consulting practice was experiencing unprecedented growth due to industry recognition of professional ethics standards and systematic approach to client relationship protection. Rodriguez's handling of Hayes's ethics violations has attracted referrals from consultants throughout the Southwest who need proven expertise in business development ethics, noted client testimonial from Strategic Planning Institute Director Michael Torres. The professional speaking opportunities at consulting conferences and business development seminars were generating additional revenue while establishing my reputation as an expert in partnership ethics and client relationship protection. Rodriguez's experience demonstrates how systematic documentation and professional ethics enforcement can transform client theft attempts into competitive advantages, observed professional services conference organizer Sarah Davis. The consulting services I had developed in business development ethics and client relationship protection were attracting professionals across multiple industries who needed enhanced security for established client relationships. Samuel's methods provide comprehensive protection against partnership exploitation while maintaining focus on client value creation, noted consulting industry analyst Robert Kim. But the most meaningful outcome was validation of systematic approaches to professional relationships and business development, as sustainable competitive advantages that transcended individual partnership arrangements. Hayes's client theft attempt proved that systematic methodology and professional ethics create more durable client relationships than aggressive marketing or manipulation tactics, I reflected during industry presentations. The enhanced client relationships that resulted from transparent crisis management were generating expanded consulting agreements and strategic planning projects that exceeded pre-theft revenue levels. Our clients appreciated Samuel's professional handling of Hayes's ethics violations, noted business development metrics showing 23% revenue growth. His systematic approach to relationship management creates long-term competitive advantages. The professional reputation I had developed through ethical crisis management was attracting strategic partnership opportunities with major consulting firms who valued demonstrated integrity and systematic client protection capabilities. Rodriguez Strategic Solutions' ethical standards and systematic methodology make them ideal partners for complex strategic planning engagements, noted partnership agreement with Regional Consulting Consortium. Hayes's systematic client theft had inadvertently created opportunities for professional growth, industry recognition, and business expansion that wouldn't have been possible without the comprehensive legal victory that validated ethical business practices. Sometimes the most sophisticated partnership exploitation creates catalysts for professional development and competitive advantage, I observed during strategic planning presentations. The documentation methods that had exposed Hayes's violations were being adopted by other consulting practices while generating ongoing training revenue and industry leadership recognition. Rodriguez's systematic approach to partnership documentation and client relationship protection has become standard practice for professional service firms, noted industry publication featuring our ethics enforcement case study. Hayes's attempt to destroy my client relationships through systematic theft had ultimately strengthened my competitive position while creating professional opportunities that exceeded anything our original partnership could have achieved. Professional integrity and systematic documentation provide more reliable competitive advantages than partnership arrangements based on convenience rather than shared ethical standards, I noted during business development workshops. Have you ever discovered that ethical conduct during professional crises creates opportunities for business growth and industry recognition that exceed anything the original relationships could provide? Sometimes systematic integrity becomes the foundation for competitive advantages that transcend individual partnership arrangements. Standing in my expanded office 18 months after Hayes's professional destruction and client theft collapse, I reflected on how his systematic partnership violations had inadvertently transformed Rodriguez Strategic Solutions into the Southwest's leading consultancy for business development ethics and client relationship protection. The $385,000 in damages recovered, combined with 34% revenue growth from returning clients and ethical crisis referrals, had enabled business expansion that exceeded my original practice projections by over 250%. The new 4,800 square foot facility accommodated 6 additional consultants who specialized in strategic planning ethics, partnership agreement enforcement, and client relationship protection services that had become essential offerings for professional service firms facing systematic partnership exploitation. Working with an organization that prioritizes professional ethics and systematic documentation provides security and credibility that attracts the highest quality client relationships, noted senior consultant Jennifer Adams. Samuel's ethical standards create competitive advantages that transcend individual client engagements. The client relationships I had recovered and strengthened through transparent crisis management were generating expanded strategic planning projects and long-term retainer agreements that reflected enhanced trust and appreciation for professional integrity. Rodriguez Strategic Solutions' handling of Hayes's ethics violations demonstrated exactly the kind of professional standards we need for strategic business relationships, Morrison Manufacturing CEO Jennifer Walsh noted during our annual planning review. The business development ethics consulting practice I had established was generating annual revenue of $240,000 while serving professional service firms across multiple industries who needed enhanced protection against partnership exploitation and systematic client theft. Samuel's experience provides unique expertise in preventing and addressing partnership violations that threaten established client relationships, noted client testimonial from Regional Consulting Association. But the most significant achievement was industry recognition that established me as the definitive expert in professional service partnership ethics and systematic client relationship protection. Rodriguez's transformation from theft victim to industry ethics leader demonstrates how professional integrity and systematic documentation create lasting competitive advantages, noted Professional Services Quarterly feature article. The International Coach Federation had requested my participation in developing enhanced ethical standards and partnership oversight protocols that would prevent systematic client exploitation by coaching professionals. Rodriguez's experience provides essential insights for strengthening professional coaching ethics and preventing partnership abuse, ICF Ethics Committee Chair Robert Martinez explained. Annual speaking engagements at professional development conferences, business ethics seminars, and consulting industry events were generating supplemental income of $95,000 while reinforcing my expertise in systematic relationship protection and ethical business practices. Rodriguez's systematic approach to partnership documentation and ethics enforcement has become the industry standard for professional service firms, observed National Consulting Association President Michael Torres. Hayes's permanent professional disbarment had concluded with complete destruction of his consulting credentials and ongoing wage garnishment that would continue for 15 years to satisfy civil judgment obligations. Hayes's systematic ethics violations resulted in permanent industry exclusion that sends clear messages about the consequences of partnership exploitation and client theft, Professional Ethics Review noted. But Hayes's professional destruction had also created enhanced protection for consulting industry ethical standards by establishing legal precedents that strengthened partnership agreement enforcement and professional oversight capabilities. The Hayes prosecution clarified enforcement mechanisms for partnership violations and professional ethics sanctions, legal analyst Patricia Newman observed. The strategic planning methodologies I had developed and protected from Hayes's theft were generating licensing revenue from consulting firms who needed proven frameworks while ensuring proper attribution and ethical implementation. Rodriguez's strategic planning protocols provide comprehensive analytical capabilities that maintain ethical standards while delivering superior client outcomes, noted licensing agreement with Southwest Consulting Alliance. The professional reputation I had built through ethical crisis management was attracting strategic partnership opportunities with major consulting firms who valued demonstrated integrity and systematic client protection expertise. Rodriguez Strategic Solutions' ethical standards and proven methodology make them ideal partners for complex strategic planning initiatives, explained partnership agreement with Denver-based consulting consortium. Looking back on Hayes' systematic betrayal and attempted client theft, I realized that his sophisticated partnership exploitation had inadvertently created opportunities for professional growth, industry leadership, and business success that exceeded anything our original coaching relationship could have provided. Sometimes the most comprehensive partnership violations become catalysts for professional development and competitive advantage that transform entire industry practices, I observed during strategic planning leadership seminars. The systematic documentation that had exposed Hayes' theft was serving as the foundation for expanded consulting services that helped other professionals protect established client relationships while maintaining ethical business practices. Hayes' theft attempt validated the commercial value of systematic relationship protection while creating legal precedents that enhanced industry-wide ethical standards, I noted during professional development workshops. The comprehensive legal victory had demonstrated that systematic documentation and ethical business practices provided more reliable competitive advantages than partnership arrangements based on convenience rather than shared professional standards. Professional integrity and systematic relationship management create sustainable competitive advantages that transcend individual partnership arrangements or aggressive business development tactics, I explained during business ethics presentations. Hayes' attempt to steal my client relationships through systematic partnership exploitation had ultimately strengthened my market position while creating professional opportunities and industry recognition that established Rodriguez Strategic Solutions as the regional leader in ethical strategic planning services. The people who attempt to destroy others' professional relationships through systematic partnership violations sometimes end up creating opportunities for their victims to achieve greater success through validated expertise and comprehensive ethical standards, I reflected during industry leadership conferences. The experience had proven that professional competence in systematic documentation and ethical business practices could transform attempted relationship theft into enhanced competitive position and industry authority that exceeded original business projections. Hayes' systematic client theft had inadvertently provided the foundation for building industry leadership, professional recognition, and business expansion that represented the most successful period in my 18-year consulting career. Professional relationships built on systematic integrity and ethical standards prove more durable and valuable than partnerships based on opportunistic exploitation or aggressive competitive tactics. The consulting practice that had emerged from Hayes' attempted destruction was generating higher revenue, enhanced industry recognition, and more meaningful client relationships than anything our original partnership arrangement could have achieved. Have you discovered that systematic documentation and ethical business practices can transform attempted partnership exploitation into opportunities for professional growth and industry leadership? Sometimes, the most sophisticated relationship theft becomes the foundation for building enhanced competitive advantages through validated integrity and comprehensive ethical standards. If this story of professional ethics and systematic relationship protection resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button to Revenge Tales with Luke. Share your experiences with partnership violations and professional integrity in the comments below. Your story might help someone else who's facing similar challenges with systematic client theft and partnership exploitation. See you in our next story.